This is the first innovation spotlight, and it's about Phlow and the rise of RVA's advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing cluster. What we're going to do is I'm going to give a quick overview of RVA757 Connects, because I know we have a few people joining us that have been part of the party to date. Then I'm going to introduce our speakers and then turn it over to our speakers to take us through the exciting developments at Phlow and then this advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing cluster, this association that Jeff's running. And then we're going to open it up for questions and answers, and then share with you at the end. And we will end on time. What's next for RVA 757 Connects? So I'm going to do this in 60 seconds or less. You know, we have been around now for several years, and we're a 501c3 and getting a lot of traction. And really, I want everyone to think about the work that we're doing from a real economic development global perspective. That there have been enough studies out there that have really shown that there's a new economic unit that's really being formed and we think is part of the future of economic development, and that's mega regions. And this is the US map of mega regions, and we're on the map now as the I-64 Innovation Corridor. But 70% of the population of the US, 70% of the jobs and the gross domestic product coming out of the US comes out of these 12 mega regions. And so we might be the smallest, but it's our job to have the biggest impact. And that's what we're really about. And so when you think about Richmond region and the Hampton Roads region, it's about collaboration and adding strength to strength. It's not about becoming one zip code. It's about how do we leverage each other's strengths to help each other's economy. And more cities that are nearby cities are figuring this out. They're not competing with each other, they're collaborating. And that's what we're doing. And so we can call ourselves a mega region, we can call ourselves friends, economic buddies. The bottom line is what we're trying to do is improve the economic success and quality of life of everyone in both of our regions. And so what we're doing is identifying and supporting and advancing major opportunities and initiatives that many of which would probably happen on their own, but we just can't wait. We've got to make them happen faster. And so here's a list of our projects. We really want to see us become this global internet hub. And we will probably have an innovation spotlight on this. We certainly have spent a lot of time on this topic this past year or in 2021. We want to make this happen sooner than later. And the same with the Virginia Capital Trail. This is a great example. It took 20 years to figure out how to get it designed and built and between Richmond and Williamsburg. And now we have plans for it to go from Williamsburg to Fort Monroe and ultimately Virginia Beach. We can't wait 20 more years. This is just too important. And then removing barriers to passenger rail. We've got to widen I-64. It's just a no-brainer, the 29-mile gaps from the Richmond airport to Williamsburg. You know, it's going to become more and more of a problem as our region grows. So we got to make that happen. And good news, in the budget now for 2022, 2024 is $20 million to do the planning, the pre-planning work on that gap, but increase R&D collaboration to fuel innovation. And our directors and members have a number of initiatives that really are important. I think about Dominion Energy and the offshore wind, that project, and then the pipelines for natural gas. There are all kinds of things that we need to lean into to support. And the last thing is really who we are. And so part of our job as RVA 757 Connects is to really shine a spotlight on what we're calling the I-64 Innovation Corridor. And that word innovation is extremely deliberate, that's really the future. And so we have branded our mega region as the I-64 Innovation Corridor. We have a website full of rich statistics and data and reports from all of our meetings. And we're going to continue to build this brand. And we're going to do it by showcasing folks like today who have just really been on the tip of the spear of innovation. And so our speakers today, we have Eric Edwards, the co-founder and CEO of Phlow. And thank you, Eric, for joining us. And then Robbie Demera, the chief of staff for Phlow. And Jeffrey Gallagher, who is the interim executive director of the Advanced Pharmaceutical Manufacturing and R&D Cluster Accelerator. We have three speakers that are the brain trust of Phlow and the future of this advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing. I mean, we could not have three better speakers to share this exciting innovation story that's coming out of the Richmond region. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers, and they're going to speak one by one, sharing some PowerPoint slides, and then we're going to turn into questions and answers. So as you hear the speakers, we want you to use your chat button and send Laura an email on your questions, and Laura will tee them up and then be the MC in our Q&A session and share, or we'll ask our speakers to address each one of your questions. So let's get started, and I'm going to turn it over, and then we'll get to the Q&As. So let me stop sharing and turn it over to our talented group.
All right, let me see if I can pull this up here. Let me know if y'all are able to see this. So you should be able to see a new presentation. John, did we transfer successfully?
Yes, we did, Eric. Looks great.
And y'all can hear me okay, so we'll dive right in. Well, it's great being with you all today. Thank you so much for joining in this important discussion, a discussion that centers on collaboration, centers on connection, and that's really what we've been all about from day one with this program. It's been about teaming with exceptional partners and people and trying to drive industry change. And in our case, industry change that was needed in the pharmaceutical industry. So I'm Eric Edwards. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Phlow. PHLOW stands for Applying Flow Chemistry to the Pharmaceutical Industry. So we're all about advanced development and manufacturing. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about kind of the background and how this entire project came to be, that hopefully is going to spark new conversations and eventually new partnerships and the opportunity to really align with some of you all on some initiatives in the Hampton Roads and the 757 region and area. So we're very excited to be having this conversation, because we do believe that Central Virginia is just the start of something here that is so much bigger and needs to be extended into other regions, including the 757 region. So back in 2019, I was working on a program that focused on trying to understand why drug shortages are so pervasive in our country. Today, someone will call 911 right in the area where you live, and there will be an ambulance that shows up, and there will be at least one, if not two or more drugs that are not available, that are emergency medications that are not available in this country. And there are over 100 medications that are essential medicines that have been on the drug shortage list for over a decade. And they come and go, but in America today, individuals will have to accept a drug that is less safe or not as efficacious because of a drug shortage in this country. So we set out to try to figure out why is this the case, and that led to us standing up a plan to focus on drug manufacturing here in the United States, and this all occurred before COVID. And then when COVID ended up actually presenting itself, we started realizing that the same drugs that we were working to prepare and manufacturing for children's hospitals throughout the United States, these were the same drugs that were going to be needed for COVID-19 hospitalized patients. And then that led to us really jumping in with the United States government and trying to play a thought leadership role in protecting our medication supply chain. So the United States is dangerously dependent on foreign sources for many essential medicines. If you look at all of these different categories, you can see that many of the drugs that we would require, not only for the treatment of COVID-19, but even the top 100 generic drugs in the United States, whether they're for cardiovascular disease or respiratory ailments, and then our key antibiotic industrial base, it's been lost over multiple decades to foreign manufacturing. And there's a lot of reasons for this, and there's plenty of fingers that you can point. The pharmaceutical manufacturing industry is to blame. We've got intermediaries, we've got wholesalers, we've got GPOs, PBMs. All of these have led to this focus on really offshoring. But the question really is, even though a global supply chain is important, what types of drugs are critical for the United States to have onshore as a matter of national public health security? And we know that supply chain disruptions can occur at any time from many causes, whether it's a natural disaster, or we had that Suez Canal that created a blockade earlier. We've got China that's had major issues with their own supply chains. We've got worker and labor shortages. So there's many things that can lead to supply disruptions. When it comes to the essential medicines necessary to sustain life, we believe, and now the United States government in a bipartisan fashion believes, that we must have our own end-to-end industrial base for certain sectors, including the pharmaceutical sector for essential medicines. So whether you've been hearing in the news chip shortage issues or battery power challenges or rare earth metals, there are certain industrial bases that we should have an end-to-end supply chain domestically. And this is the one that the Phlow program is focusing on. And there's been increased urgency to address this, both in the previous administration and now the Biden administration. It is all a bipartisan effort to figure out what are the right classes of medicines that we need here as a matter of national public health security. And that led to the Phlow program. In addition to that, on top of the need to secure supply chain and redundancy in our system, the FDA, since COVID started, has had problems trying to get their foreign inspection program back started. So we truly are operating off of this honor code system for quality for the medicines that are coming into the United States right now. The FDA is currently not inspecting foreign manufacturing sites. And that poses a huge challenge for the trust of our medications as well. So Phlow is an impact-driven, trailblazing public benefit corp. So we are a B Corp. In fact, we just filed to be the first independently certified, B-certified company that is focused on pharmaceutical manufacturing in America. And we have a bold mission and vision. We believe that the U.S. should be a country where every human being has access to the essential medicines necessary to sustain life and conquer disease. But if you just sit on that vision statement and think about that, that should be easy in our country. We are a country that has unbelievable resources, yet even today in the United States, every human being doesn't have access to the essential medicines. So that is what we're focused on as a B Corp. We aim to be a beacon in our industry. We're focused on social performance, environmental performance, and financial performance. And it's a very, very unique company that is all built on the strength of our collaborations and the strength of our partnership. Through a teaming agreement with several other entities, we were awarded a very significant contract in May of 2020. This was a contract worth up to $812 million with $354 million guaranteed. And we continue to get additional funding from the government to make sure that we are building the smart factories of the future with an Industry 4.0 mindset. We not only immediately ramped up production of critical drugs for the COVID-19 pandemic, including filling our strategic national stockpile with a couple million doses of drugs that were non-existent during the height of the pandemic. But we're also in this Richmond-Petersburg corridor building this industrial base end-to-end, several manufacturing facilities, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in a second. And this is really where there's a huge opportunity when you think about what's happening in the Hampton Roads region and 757 of collaboration, of trying to strengthen this even further and go beyond. Our platform is all about advanced manufacturing. So one of the reasons the federal government decided to help subsidize all of these facilities is because they wanted the United States to move in a direction of having advanced facilities, of moving the entire industrial base in pharmaceutical manufacturing, for generic manufacturing in particular, away from batch manufacturing, which is an antiquated traditional way of making these drugs, to continuous manufacturing, which is a new novel approach that is highly automated, reduces the labor requirements, and as is one of the challenges with competing against China and India. But importantly, reducing our environmental footprint, improving the yields that are produced, and decreasing the cost as a result. So that is what we're focused on. It is a very significant effort, and it is not easy. But we have a leg up because we've partnered with fantastic partners with VCU, Medicines for All Institute, Ampac, Fine Chemicals, SK Farmteco, who has already been manufacturing active pharmaceutical ingredients for many, many years, and Civica, the leading nonprofit pharmaceutical company in America. All of us are working together alongside additional partners to make this a reality. And when you do so, these are examples of some of our initial programs, you're able to have much success. So our very first program, we had almost a 50% increase in yield, a 25% lower cost, and a 50% reduction in toxic solvent and other waste products, which is exactly why we started this program in the first place. And we're getting even greater results with our pipeline products that are now moving from development to commercialization. So our first products are beginning commercial manufacturing this quarter. We're very, very excited to actually see the results of a couple of years now of work, resulting in actual active ingredients that are made on American soil that haven't been made in the US for decades. These are some of the facilities that we're building in Petersburg. So we're building several small and large scale manufacturing facilities, as well as having Civica bring a vial and syringe significant sterile manufacturing facility on Phlow's land in an agreement that we've reached with them. We also have a commercial agreement with Civica. So you end up having a campus here that's already attached to Ampac Fine Chemicals Petersburg campus. This is the Petersburg API facility that used to be owned by Boehringer Ingelheim. BI used to make Dimetap, Robitussin, many ingredients that you all would be familiar with right at this facility. And so we've tagged into that existing infrastructure and are now kind of moving the industry forward here end to end. And then as it relates to this upper right strategic active pharmaceutical ingredient reserve, we are building a very novel approach to the SNS of the future. So one of the challenges with the strategic national stockpile is they were putting finished dosage forms, so finished vials and syringes of every dose and every concentration for these essential medicines, which is the most expensive form of a drug with the lowest shelf life, into the strategic stockpile. So we went to the government and said, we think there's a better way. Let's go to the component that is the most vulnerable component, our active pharmaceutical ingredient that is currently not made outside the United States. And let's build a supply modeled after the strategic petroleum reserve of our country's most critical ingredients, and then build a network of conversion partners to be able to convert those active ingredients into a finished form of a drug, a tablet, a capsule, a vial, a syringe, whatever that need is, and be able to do so in a very short amount of time, whether there's a trade dispute, natural disaster, or some other supply chain issue that causes a shortage, we can respond. It is highly cost effective, and it is what our country should be doing in the future. And so Phlow is building the first strategic active pharmaceutical ingredient reserve to really operationalize this new concept. So that's a little bit about Phlow and the program here. Hopefully you all are thinking through, wow, what could this mean? I'll end with, it's not just about the government program. Phlow is now looking to bring back United States manufacturing programs commercially as well. So we're working with multiple partners on what does made in the USA for our medicines look like in the future, not only in the hospital and in the retail space. And we are very excited to take this program that has really been provided rocket fuel and catalyzed by the United States government funding, and really take that and advance it even further through unique partnerships and growth and support from the Commonwealth of Virginia and Virginia companies well into the future. So thank you. Let's see if I can exit share here. All right. Robbie, we going to you, right?
No, we're going to go to Jeff. Jeff, you.
Going to Jeff. Jeff, this is you.
Okay. Folks, see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me. because of the innovation and excitement around Phlow's accomplishment and the technology out of VCU College of Engineering, Medicines for All, Dr. Gupton. This region took a look at what was happening in Richmond and in Petersburg and said, wow, for the economic well-being of this region and for the economic and health well-being of the region, the Commonwealth, the nation, and the world, what in the world can we do to try to help these firms succeed and these institutions succeed and thrive and grow and advance this extraordinary mission? And so that's what our cluster accelerator is all about. We saw the world-leading research in Richmond, that in Richmond at VCU, they're producing the top talent who understands how to generate that world-leading research. And then down in Petersburg, through the work that Eric just described, really the nation's #1 investment in making this happen, and the nation's most advanced manufacturing facilities for ushering in the new era of affordable, quality, essential medicine production in the United States. The Cluster Accelerator then is an effort to organize ourselves across the regional economic development organizations. We have two: Greater Richmond Partnership and the Virginia Gateway region, two planning districts, multiple localities, number of different universities, and the different industries that are involved to accelerate the success. So we started 18 months ago or 24 months ago and got an enhanced capacity building grant from Go Virginia, a planning grant, to the VCU's College of Engineering. How could they excite and engage the community in such a way to make the most of this? So we led a 9-month strategic planning study. Hundreds of people were involved with that, scores of stakeholders. That led to a final report with detailed recommendations last March. And then it was a march to implement the recommendations. Recommendation number 1 was to create a standing organization with someone or some group of people who would get up every morning and try to figure out how can we work as a community to support this. And so we successfully applied for an implementation grant from Go Virginia, and were awarded that last September with private funding and stakeholder funding in cash in kind. And the Go Virginia gave us a treasure chest of about $2.5 million for 2 years worth of work. Under the leadership of the Virginia Biotech Park Activation Capital, to create this organization and to begin to implement. I note just here that it was really by great happenstance that Go Virginia Region 4 a number of years had been created really out of whole cloth and just happened to represent the region, both Richmond and Petersburg, in which this cluster has emerged. And so that was a very happy coincidence. But the goal here, even though it's a sort of a bipolar at the moment of Richmond-centered and Petersburg-centric with those different functions, the goal is to help the entire region support and benefit from this historic opportunity. And there are many, many ways, there will be many, many ways to do that. I want to note that the accelerator has a leadership board and key stakeholders, and up on the screen now are the major stakeholders in the region who are involved in this and are members of the leadership board, actively participating all along. The industry is participating in a very strong way. Robbie is the chair of the leadership board for the accelerator, for example. The universities are anchor institutions, VSU and VCU in both communities, that fantastic workforce coalition, which is, or workforce alliance, which is both Reynolds and Brightpoint combined. The regional economic development organizations, a local representative from each in the state, and the park is a leader. And then some of our specialized organizations in the region are offering great help and support. Well, we were putting this together and starting on our way of implementation in October when the United States Economic Development Administration announced a historic challenge for regions to fund 30 regions across the United States which were organized as a region, had a strategic vision around a transformative, high-tech, high-growth cluster that would be globally competitive and make a major difference to the world. And it seemed as if they'd been listening in on our deliberations over the previous year, because that described us to a T. So we quickly changed our workflow over the first several months and devoted ourselves to applying for this BBBRC application. And we're fortunate to learn in December that we were one of 60 regions picked to be finalists from 529 competitors to get $500,000 of technical support, and then to prepare a final application due March 15th for a cluster or a suite of projects that together are up for an award of anywhere from 25 to 75, maybe as much as $100 million to support that cluster for each of the 30 winning regions. Our strategy has been to strengthen our existing pillars, to fill gaps that are constraints to growth, and to align the many regional assets we already have. And Eric, of course, described the significant ones that are actively doing this now. So the 6 projects that we proposed, these were outgrowths of the strategic planning process. I was just on a call with EDA immediately before this. And one of the comments was, you know, one of the things about what you've done down there is the foundation blocks of the plan, bringing the stakeholders together, thinking through a path to support this. That was all done when it was announced. And it really was a major accomplishment that hundreds of people did, and Go Virginia supported, as did our regional and local EDOs in our state. The projects are these: to get long needed sewer and water infrastructure help down in Petersburg, which is one of the most fiscally distressed localities in Virginia. They have been putting together a plan to do this, and this will hopefully be the last piece of the capital stack to make a major improvement that will meet the needs of the companies that are located there now and the companies that will come in the years ahead. To use this as an opportunity to build more laboratory facilities at the park in Richmond, so that they can locate adjacent, you know, to the fount of the science and the innovation at Medicines for All at the VCU College of Engineering, and co-collaborate and co-invent with them to further fuel the growth of the sector. To create a scale-up facility somewhere along the continuum, what we call a development park, which will accelerate the movement from lab discoveries to commercial use. Workforce then dominates the next 2, and we need to create a workforce here which is not just sufficient, but is brilliant and bountiful to meet the jobs. This is where the hockey puck is going, right? To meet the jobs when they come online down at the Petersburg manufacturing complex, to meet those jobs. Those companies have been working fabulously with VEDP and with the Community College Workforce Alliance, and now with John Tyler, and an extraordinary workforce technician, advanced manufacturing workforce technician certificate program is underway, but plus building out a completely vertical and horizontal workforce support program for employees of those companies and others, for young people who want to come into it, and the whole thing. I mean, terrific partners. This will get some extra support. VSU and VCU, anchor institutions of the 2 communities where at the moment the development is anchored. Both superb engineering schools, but VCU does not have an engineering school which really lines up with the immediate needs of the cluster. And so VCU and VSU are putting together a super collaboration in education training, R&D, and industry support. And finally, how do we accelerate the development of the supply chain, and both that's development of companies here in the region, companies across Virginia, and then the companies we have to recruit to get the firms who are here the products and services and the innovations they need in order to succeed at what they're doing, in order for the cluster to grow. Just very quickly then, these were not made up of whole cloth. We looked at several different dimensions of the kind of help we need. You know, the talent, tech, capital, 3-legged stool we all talk about, all of these were designed with that sort of in mind, and how they're going to contribute to that. We looked at the technology readiness level analysis and what projects could we put forward, which we're going to be able to strengthen gaps and also and strengthen our lead in critical areas there. We looked at the end-to-end pharmaceutical manufacturing vision that Phlow and its partners and BARDA have, and made sure that the investments we asked for from BBBRC will be ones that help support them in that critical challenge. And then, of course, the interrelationship of the projects, to support one another as they meet that goal. And one final slide, one final note then is, we are looking at this, everything we've done is to look at it as an entire region, bringing the regional assets together to strengthen it, knowing that we have modes of where this is happening now. The firms and institutions that come in to support this, to get on board and grow, they'll go where they need to grow to be successful. And so this could be anywhere in the region. And we're adding resources to our local and our regional economic development organizations in our state so they can do what they do best in helping align their strengths with the needs of the firms that will grow up within the region or outside. But similarly, this is true for across, I think, this I-64 corridor as well. And I'll stop with just one illustration. A couple of years ago, even before the accelerator was created, Dr. Gupton at Medicines for All in Richmond was at a Virginia Bio event over in Charlottesville. He discussed a technical need that he had in getting his continuous flow system with another online analytic. And he ran into a company, BrightSpec, over in Charlottesville, that had a particular analytic piece of equipment. It never worked in Phlow, but what they didn't analyze was something that would be needed as a component. A couple of years later, after a VBHRC grant and working together of those, there's now a Charlottesville company which is producing which adapted its instrumentation, manufacturing in Virginia equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a piece, which is answering a very specific need of the technology in the cluster. It's an example of how so many of us within the region, across the region, and across the Commonwealth has something to contribute to the success of the technology in these firms and our vision. And that's what we're all about, trying to make that happen.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Let me take over from here, share my screen. Give me just a second. Awesome. All right, so thank you all. Just a reminder, I think you might have seen this in the chat, that send your questions to Laura. I'm going to wrap up here in about 5 or 6 minutes and turn it over to Q&A. So before I get started, I think it was really important to kind of just pick up where Jeff left off. I'm in a very unique position based off of my previous role with the state. When I was with the state, a part of my job was to work actually with many of you on the call today, but was to work on assisting our state universities with commercializing their research for decades. And Jeff gave an example, and there are some exceptions to the rule, but for decades, we have commercialized the brightest of Virginia's ideas everywhere but Virginia, typically. And this was such a unique position. I actually met Dr. Gupton, Frank, as Jeff mentioned, and if you don't know Frank, you're missing out. And if you do, you know what a treat it is to call him a friend. But I met Frank when he was partnering with the Ivory Coast on HIV medication. And 2 years later, Eric calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm partnering with Frank. We're going to commercialize his novel processes in flow chemistry, start a new company. Would you be interested in joining us?" And I think he barely got that question out before I said yes, because this was something that was on my radar, been on my radar for a while. Very mission focused, very excited to get this going. So I say all that because, and I put this slide up here. So these are some of the organizations, the founding organizations that we identified for the accelerator cluster. But really, I want to pay some focus to Impact Fine Chemicals, Civica, and Phlow. So one of the goals here, and I think the futures for success, is going to be from the private sector. these are three great companies. I'm a little biased because I work for one of them, but I'm really eager and excited to get the mega region more involved, see how we can incorporate along the Innovation 64 corridor. John, we've got to find a way to get the name changed from Interstate 64 to Innovation 64, but how we can get more companies, not only those that we have here in the state, more involved, but how can we attract not only pharmaceutical manufacturers, but the entire supply chain to support that group. So I'm excited for this launch. I don't know if you got to see the Virginia Business article yesterday, but I wanted to draw some attention here too. There was a great article in Virginia Business yesterday highlighting all the work that's happening down in Petersburg. There's one paragraph though that they share that in November of last year, so just 3 months ago, S&P Global Ratings raised the city's bond rating, so Petersburg's bond rating, 3 places from a BBB+ to an A+. And then Moody did the same thing, raising it to A1. I find this to be so important because we've got such a, we spend so much time talking to the General Assembly, whether it be the good work of Go Virginia, the Center for Innovative Technology, CIT and VIPA, VBHRC, really outstanding organizations doing good work for the state, but it's always so hard to express the ripple effect of economic development and how one investment can lead to future investments. I was so proud when I read this article to see that an investment from our federal government, and an investment from a university in a seasoned professional in Dr. Gupton to develop that research, how that ripple effect is responding to now the entire city of Petersburg has a bond rating that they can use to really expand all of the opportunities of the city. Just something that I thought was really powerful, important to point out there. Quick 4 things. So we've got lots of things I think that distinguish the cluster and make it really important, but these 4 I think are really good for the mega region. Near-term ROI. So this initiative will generate ROI because we're using existing investments momentum through the private sector. So the cluster is asking the state of Virginia for some funds, which I'll get to in just a minute, but there is a lot of ROI right now based off of the things that we've already been doing. It's fiscally responsible. The cluster is building upon existing assets. We've got the biotech park, the Petersburg manufacturing facility, CCAM, VCU, Virginia State, the community college networks. It's holistic. It addresses multiple priorities from translational research all the way to creating companies. So really important, I think, to the mega region. The third one is making Virginia more competitive. The cluster is addressing the national need. If successful, the efforts will increase the regional competitiveness by building assets that attract other suppliers to the regions. This is what I was talking about, and in the opportunity to really get along the I-64 corridor. And then the final one is to strengthen the end-to-end innovation capacity. So the cluster does expand the entire innovation pipeline from university research to the finished product. There is some opportunities in the key starter materials. So Eric didn't really get into this in his explanation, but from a layman perspective, there's kind of these 3 points to a pharmaceutical. There's the registered or the key starter materials, the API, which we produce, and then the finished drug product. Right now, we are able to source a good amount of key starter material, but not a majority from here in the United States. And so we are asking the state of Virginia to make a moderate investment to help the cluster be able to fulfill that full end-to-end. In doing so, Central Virginia, the I-64 corridor, the Innovation 64 corridor will be the only campus, the only region in the world that has this full capabilities, and I'm excited for that. Finally, to round it out, if you guys aren't asking any questions, I will. These are good questions for you to think about now during Q&A, but also to think about and come back to us if there's some opportunities. This is where I really think you can engage. So what businesses do you know along the I-64 corridor that could support the pharmaceutical manufacturing supply chain? One of our projects for the BBBRC is looking into the supply chain and some of those gaps. So do you know any businesses that could support us there? There's a tremendous number of technical workforce training institutions in the mega region. Are all of them informed? Are they engaged where practical or applicable? I think that is something to be thinking about. If you're on the call and you're from an organization that's in higher ed, do you know what's going on here? This is a really big one. The pharma cluster is rooted in novel advanced manufacturing processes and products. I say novel because, or the importance of the novel is that these are new. These are things that bad actors want. So how can the cluster leverage the information services, the high-speed internet, data analytics, cybersecurity industries here in the region, protect our own industry, something to be thinking about. Very important to us, I think should be important to you. And then what other initiatives, organizations, or programs are in the mega region that could leverage, that could be leveraged to support the cluster's phase 2 application. So as Jeff mentioned, we are coming up on that on March 11th, March 15th to submit. So what else is out there that I don't know about, that Jeff doesn't know about, that could help us secure those additional funds? And with that, I will stop sharing and pass it back over to Laura.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you guys for presenting. That was incredibly informative. We do have a few questions. And as questions arise, please continue to send them to me. The first one's from Stuart Henderson. In thinking about other initiatives in the RVA757, I'm wondering what synergy there may be with data analytics initiatives underway across the universities and labs. Is there any big data or artificial intelligence angle to where Phlow is headed?
Yeah, I'll jump right in on that one. The answer is yes. One of our first hires was Dr. Dave Levin, who some of you all know, who was the former Chief Medical and Information Officer for Cleveland Clinic. We brought Dave in, and I looked him in the eyes and said, your job is to help us develop the future of pharmaceutical manufacturing underpinned by a data and analytics framework with enhanced cybersecurity. And so if you're going to be protecting our government's medications, and we're going to be building the smart factories of the future and heading in an industry 4.0 mindset, you better believe that we're going to make sure we connect all of that data together from the point of care at the patient all the way backwards to really create what the pharmaceutical industry should have been doing all along to help prevent future drug shortages. So I believe that if you think about what's happening with the internet and thinking through this massive program where 757 is right in the center of it, and there's going to be significant data center activity, there's going to be significant opportunities. We think that data and analytics and cyber is where we could really strengthen a relationship. And it is, if I were to say top 3, where should we be partnering from Richmond and the 757 region, that would be one of the top 3 areas for sure.
Excellent. The next question is from Ted Chandler. What are some specific areas where RVA757 can use our collaboration megaphone to advance or accelerate your 2022 goals?
Jeff, maybe that would be a good one for you. And then Eric, just on the accelerator, I think that I mentioned that right now there's an ask before the General Assembly. It's a moderate ask compared to the amount of investment from the private sector and the federal government. But I think there could be a huge help from this group in supporting and sort of amplifying that message that this is a really it is limited risk. You know, we've got money in there. For those of you that are pro site readiness at VEDP, which I am. Site readiness is about getting sites prepared for sale, for potential attraction of businesses. In this case, it exists. It's being built. It is real. The Moody rating, the AAA bond rating, it's going up. And so it is a limited risk for the state to make an investment, but it is huge to the overall success of the cluster in the future, both in Richmond at the wet labs, and then the work happening, the manufacturing work happening down in Petersburg. But Jeff?
Yeah, I'd say third-party validation that what is happening here is real and that it's viewed on the ground as an extraordinary opportunity. always helps. There's opportunities for letters of support that we put in. We had many of those last time, but to show a momentum, a snowballing of interest and of support and of pledges to look and work together, those would be very, very helpful. I'm happy to talk to anybody about those and to sort of think through specifics about how you could plug into some of the 6 projects or others, or at least how we could form little study groups to look at those. I think another important thing, second, the whole supply chain thing is just immensely important. This opportunity landed here through a series of wonderful coincidences, and is now being driven in a way by extraordinarily talented people who are doing it better than anyone could. But it's landed in a place that is not RTP, Boston, San Diego, et cetera. So you cannot just get on the phone and have someone tweak your HPLC machine who's 20 minutes away. They might have to come from 6 hours away or a day away. There's a whole supply chain richness and breadth that we need to grow here in order for our firms to have the maximum resources for them to succeed. These will bring in jobs. These will bring in wealth development. And so being attentive, as Eric asked and Robbie asked, and I have, to this whole supply chain richness is really, really critical. And the third point I would say is, now this is with respect to the BBBRC application specifically, rather than the overall long-term growth. As a Biden administration program, it's critically important in order to win this grant that we have to show that the region and the cluster is focused on the equitable participation and equitable distribution of the fruits of the EDA investment in the grant. And so an equity plan is a critical part of what we've done. And so anyone who's out there who has insights or who would like to participate or who has experience in looking at how we do things and then doing them in a way that is proactively and purposefully going to lead to greater equitable distribution of what we do, we'd love to hear from you as well on that and be partner with you.
I would just briefly add, Ted, thanks for the question. It's why these conversations are so important, and this forum is huge. So as we look near term in 2022, you've heard today that we're building infrastructure end to end, and that involves the ability to develop drugs, analyze those drugs, all the equipment for the facilities, transferring the drugs from an active ingredient state to a finished product state, and then the distribution network that is necessary to do all of that, underpinned by a data and analytics and cybersecure framework. Only you all know what you're thinking in your mind right now that we don't know around, hey, have you thought about contacting this company in this region? And so my ask to you is, we now have a forum for discussion. We have a forum to say, hey, is there any benefit by connecting this flow in this entire regional cluster to this organization that is in 757? Starts of ideas turn into conversations, which turn into partnerships. And I think that, there's been already opportunities that have come to Phlow where we say, we don't need that, but Civica needs that, or Ampac Fine Chemicals needs that, or VCU could use that person. So we kind of have our eye on what is going to be happening over the next several years. We just need greater awareness on what those opportunities and partnerships could look like based off of the great work that's being done in the 757 region.
Excellent. We have one more question, and it's been kind of partially answered. It's been touched on, but it's from Renee Houghton. What's being done to ensure the cluster benefits the residents of Petersburg specifically, particularly given the BBB grants focus on historically excluded communities? Now, this is specifically touching on workforce programs directed to less advantaged populations, or housing or transportation.
Robbie, you want to start, and then I can add, or Jeff, I'm not sure if you want to weigh in, but there's a lot to that question to unpack, but there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think to answer the BBBRC portion, there are 6 projects related to that application. The number 1 project is infrastructure upgrades for the city of Petersburg. And those upgrades are not just specific to the pharmaceutical region, but will be beneficial for the hospital that's just down the road. And there's a lot of infrastructure needs as well. Virginia State University, Virginia Commonwealth University are in a partnership. That's one of the projects to have a dual track so that we've got, if you take the chemist from Virginia State and the chemical engineer from VCU, and they were to make a worker, that's the type of person that Phlow, AMPAC, Civica is looking for, and that's the type of idea that they're working on that. The community college system has one of the projects also do the same thing from workforce development. So, and the park itself, at least the manufacturing park, I think it's important to know because this gets asked a lot. When we say Petersburg, it's like you say Richmond, but you're not actually in Richmond. This is in the city limits of the city of Petersburg. So this is close to $500 million of investment so far in the city of Petersburg. This is new jobs in the city of Petersburg. So just from the BBBRC standpoint, from the cluster development, a lot of benefit is going, I believe, to the city of Petersburg. And I have to say, because it's being, not because it's being recorded, but because it's true, the city of Petersburg, Mayor Parham have been great partners in this process. They have really stepped up and done everything that they can to make it a great place for us to build this company. So just want to point that out there as well. They're very much involved in the process. Jeff, did you want to expand on that?
Yeah, just when we put together the application with Robbie and others' leadership, one of the big points we wanted to examine and plan for and communicate was this conviction that it's not just in Petersburg, but it's of Petersburg. You know, it won't not, you know, that the young people are made aware in middle school and high school of these opportunities and begin to turn their life at that point, because these, you know, the opportunities of being in an advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing facility or any like that may be totally unknown to them from that community. So CCAM has done some marvelous work in their FAME program of getting into the public high schools early to begin to have young people think about a career going a certain way. Brightpoint, John Tyler becoming Brightpoint, has done great work in how it outreach into the community to get members of that community to come into the workforce programs to be trained to have those jobs. In an advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing setting, the figures nationwide are that 3/4 of the jobs are high school plus training. So there's a great opportunity, and we were spending a lot of time trying to look at how we let that community come into the pipeline, if you will, of enjoying that opportunity. With respect to housing, really very little on that right now. But with respect to transportation, we were just on an hour-long conversation with EDA earlier, talking about the transportation aspect. One very interesting thing is it's at least to this point, you know, anchored at one end by Medicines for All, which is about a 9-iron from I-95 to the joint campus down in Petersburg, which is, you know, it's a sand trap on 95 basically, and everything in between, where John Tyler's campus is going to be, where Norfolk State, Virginia State is. So how can we begin to make sure that we take advantage of that natural accessibility and bring transportation services to the people who've been historically excluded but have this opportunity to participate? So we're thinking about those things.
And I'll just add briefly, thank you for the question. We, as a B Corp, we have to be responsible stewards to get into the community. And when I mean get into the community, I mean get into the community. And we have already demonstrated what that looks like to model that behavior for our employees and our partners. When we first started construction, we found out that the local elementary school, Pleasance Lane Elementary, didn't even have a playground, y'all. Mm-hmm. Your kids going to an elementary school that didn't have a playground. So AMPAC, VCU, Civica, and Phlow stepped up and built them a playground.
Wow.
That's what getting in the community really means. Mm-hmm. And that's our commitment as a company, in addition to these bolder, broader initiatives, including workforce development. And so my wife and I are co-chairing the American Heart Association Heartball this year in Richmond. And getting in the community to us means finding those healthcare disparities and getting blood pressure cuffs to those who haven't seen their doctor in Petersburg region for over a year. We have to be in there helping these individuals who really, in my opinion, have so much opportunity ahead of them. They just need someone to come alongside them and say, here's the way, this is what we should be doing together. And we are thrilled and honored and humbled to partner and bring Petersburg opportunities, new jobs, and hopefully this initial activity will catalyze all these other industries, housing, et cetera, retail, shopping. It's an amazing place if you've never been. So we're looking forward to being good partners and good stewards of what we've been provided.
Wow. Listen, Eric and Jeff and Robbie, thank you guys so much. I kept hearing and seeing the word super collaboration and now I really totally get it. And I really appreciate you bringing in both of our regions, 757 and RVA. This is truly a collaborative effort where 1 + 1 = 3. So thank you so much. We're coming up upon the end of our hour here. I want everybody to think about what you've learned today and think about other topics that you would like to see featured on this Innovation Spotlight. I think today was an amazing kickoff of what we have in mind in this whole series. The next event we have is on March 1st. And Stuart Henderson is going to share a little bit about super computing at Jeff Lab. And Stuart's on the call. So Stuart, do you want to just share 30 seconds or so on what you're going to be sharing with us on March 1st?
Sure, John, would love to. The federal government is intent on building the world's first purpose-built supercomputer for data analytics and data science. And they will be citing this at one of the U.S. Department of Energy national labs. And Jefferson Lab in Newport News, Virginia is one of the U.S. Department of Energy's 17 national labs, and we are the front runner for that facility. And it is going to be a real game changer for basic scientific research, but also for industries that rely on, I would say the most cutting edge artificial intelligence and machine learning and big data challenges. So we're trying to be that place, and it feeds in perfectly to everything we're talking about, all the exciting initiatives here in the RVA757. So look forward to telling you about that in 1 month's time.
See you on March 1st. So thank you everyone for joining us. This was recorded. We are going to post it and send it out. And please do suggest future topics for us. And thank you so much for all the support you're giving RVA 757 Connects in the I-64 Innovation Corridor. Take care.